Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on July 27, 2021 at approximately 12:47 p.m. PST. Time to get to work, I do believe. Well, that was entertaining. Don't mind me, my eyes just went a little fuzzy for a minute. Anyway, as I've mentioned before, the only person on the planet, well, in all fairness, the only entity in existence that can be successful for you is you. And it would seem if my voice sounds a little off today, it would seem my throat is having trouble. So, take a look at where your life is. Okay, this is where it all starts, where it always comes back to. Because what happens is you take a look at where your life is, decide what you're not content with. When you figure that out, which trust me on this one, and if you don't believe me, see how long it takes you to figure out one thing that you're not content with. Just one thing. Okay, if you're not content with it, that's the thing you change, because here's the reality. If you find something in your life you're not content with, this is going to make things a little more complicated for you. You're not going to be able to enjoy life as much as you could if you were content with that thing. Okay, now remember, when we're talking about things that you're content with or not content with, I am referring to things that you have direct control over. Okay. And one of the biggest factors involved in that is identifying what you're pleased with, which is a lot easier than trying to figure out what you might be pleased with. Yes, I'm doing something really annoying. That's why I paused. I don't see the point in wasting a whole pile of time on waiting for things to happen. Okay. I mean, technically you can do so, but here's what happens when you do that. Okay. Procrastination, the only thing it has ever accomplished is putting things off. Okay. Now, with that in mind, if you take a look at that and you go, okay, what am I not pleased with? You can wait until tomorrow. You absolutely can. But the problem is, the only time in existence you will ever be able to alter that will be in the here and now, right this moment. You can wait until tomorrow, but when you get to do it, it'll be right at that moment that you're doing it. Okay, which is always entertaining to try and figure out if you're trying to find a way around it, as it were. Okay. Now, in case you're wondering what I'm doing here, it's very simple. I've got a whole stack of paperwork that I've got to deal with that, like you, I keep putting off. So, the way I figure it, if I deal with it while I'm looking at you, two things happen. One, I get things dealt with. Okay. The other thing is that it does go to show when I talk about this idea of making sure that you're being true to you. Okay. If I'm going to tell you procrastination doesn't work, it doesn't accomplish a whole lot, does it not stand to reason that I should be following that idea? And going, okay, this is what I'm aiming for. I've got to get this stuff dealt with. And the only way I can do that is if I actually take the time to make things happen. Okay, to literally put them in motion. Now, with that in mind, yeah, this is going to be a little scattered, obviously. Anyway, let's try and stay focused, shall we? This just goes to prove that I am, like I said, I am not perfect. Okay, this is a live recording, meaning that what you see is what you get. If you ever meet me in person, if you ever end up talking to me on the street, you'll find I do exactly the same thing. I end up going in 14 different directions all at the same time, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but at least I'm honest about it. Okay, because the real problem when you look at that is so many people will say, oh, I'm really good at this, and I run into it in a lot of fields. Okay, where they go, I'm really good at what I'm doing, and then when you actually call them on it, they're not. Okay, the only thing I've been really good at doing, in my opinion, is being honest. This is the way I am. Okay, and that's not necessarily a good thing in some people's eyes, but it is the reality, and I don't have to figure out what I'm doing, what people like. I don't have to figure out whether or not people are happy with it. Okay, at least if they are not happy with it, they'll know why. Because I told them I wasn't going to do that. Heck, I've done that a lot. But find something you're not content with. Focus on that for just a moment. Okay, like what I've done here. I've got 4 sheets of paper I have to, 4 or 5, I don't know, that I've got to actually turn in. Okay, that I've got to turn in. I've got to file out of the way. Okay, and by doing that, okay, I will get them out of the way. I will be able to actually move forward. Okay, and get things done that I need to. You have the same ability, but the only person on the planet, the only person in existence, the only one in existence that can be successful for you is you. You can get all the guidance in the world you'd like. Okay, every tool can be offered to you, but the reality is, if you don't pick those tools up, you're not going to make much headway with them. Take the best hammer on the planet. If you don't pick the thing up, it isn't going to do a thing. Okay, it's just going to lay there. So, figure that side of it out and decide. Now remember, where it comes to the goals that you set for yourself, break them down into 15-minute to half-hour tasks. That way you can get them done and you'll feel like you got something accomplished. As opposed to making a list of things, or as opposed to putting a goal down that's going to take you 6 hours to do, and you don't get it done, so you end up feeling like you got nothing done. Net result, you're feeling a little bit out of sorts. That's where I run into the problem. Now, of course, I've talked about this thing about a list for a lot of months now. Okay, and you can get carried away with it. If you make the list too long, what'll happen is you'll get discouraged by the length of the list. Okay, that's where it gets to be a little bit problematic. Okay, so what is really necessary is making certain from your standpoint that that's why I tell you, start with 3 things. You get 3 things on your list, and that's where you start. Get 1 done, check it off, and go down and add a 3rd. That way you'll feel like you get a fair chunk done in one day. Okay, and that usually works out a lot better than just leaving it alone. Okay, now the nice part about it is, if you get something done, if you've got something on your list and you don't get it finished, it's already on your list for the following day. Now, don't forget, when you're putting the list together, make certain that you remember to put in things like lunch and dinner. Okay, don't forget the other neat little things like cleaning up afterwards. These are all just little things that many people overlook. Okay, but I've got 3, like I've got 3 or 4 major goals. Okay, one is regarding this video. Okay, and the reason that I came back and the reason I returned at all was to pass on one message, and that is that everybody on this, everybody in existence, when we work together, regardless of your race, your political alignment, your finances, regardless of anything, working together, we can make this a better world. Okay, a world where we don't have the fear, well, you'll still have the fear, sorry. We don't have war, we don't have famine, we don't have jealousy. These are things that, by the way, are going to take a long time to correct. And it cannot be done by one person, although one person can start it. One person can get things moving in the right direction. Okay, but it's going to take all of us working together to really make things happen. Okay, and if we don't work together, then things will stay the way they are. Which, by the way, in my opinion, is a really bad setup. Now, here's the neat part about it. Okay, we're still in the middle of, people talk about us still being in the middle of COVID, that sort of thing. And, it's still there. Let us understand something. So is alcoholism, so is diabetes, so is drug addiction, so is theft. All of these things are still in existence, and all of them require our attention. Okay, and the reality is, working together, we can eliminate the problems that we've got. But it's going to require everybody taking responsibility for their own actions. Karmic law number 1, be true to yourself first. Karmic law number 2, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And number 3 is energy out, energy in. Compare all of the laws that you follow, whether they're spiritual guidelines, whether they're laws that are made by society, whether they are support group guidelines, if you will, from things like PTSD, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. All of these guidelines fall into those, are likely to fall into those 3 categories, under those 3 laws. Now, if you find one that doesn't, please drop me a line at one of the points below, at one of the contact points, and let me know, because thus far I haven't found one that won't fit. And it would be fascinating to find one that doesn't fit. With that in mind, okay, like I said, working together, we can make this a much better world for everybody involved. Okay, just about. There are always those people that will not be happy anyway. And there's just not a whole lot that it's going to make sense to. But, now, you notice, I'm talking away here, and I'm a little distracted today, it would seem. But this is because, well, frankly, my world is not quite as, shall we say, cut and dried as I would like. Working on it, but it hasn't got there yet. Okay, now one of the nice little parts about this, about the whole way that the world is working, is by working together, we can actually make this into a much better world for virtually everybody. There's always going to be people that prefer things to be complicated. Or at least that's the way they seem. Okay, they seem to have this really neat tendency of making things very complicated very quickly. Okay, now, here's the biggest thing. I've gone back and forth all over the place, so I'll apologize for that. I'm not expecting a whole lot of response on this one. I would appreciate a thumbs up on the video. Okay, this particular day is simply going to be a little bit more along the lines of, my life is just plain what I call normal. I'm pretty certain everybody runs into days like this. But I just decided I was not going to make the mistake of not getting the video done. Probably should have in some ways, but at least this one isn't quite, that things are, that this is, can we try one thought? This just goes to show that when I say my life is a little different, it is, but everybody has days that are a little off. Okay, now, here's the neat little trick, and this is what's called changing on the fly. Okay, or what I call changing on the fly. I've been bouncing all over the place here. What do you do when you get off track? Okay, as you can see, that happens. Well, the reality of it is you take a step back, you sit down, and you literally take a couple of breaths and go, okay, I've been running in circles. I've got to get things organized. If I'm going to get anything accomplished today, I'm going to have to get organized. I'm going to have to make things work in a functional fashion, which can be challenging at best. But if you're feeling really, really scattered, take the time to just literally take a breath and go, okay, I've been going all over the place. Now, what am I going to do? And you take a step back, you take that list, and you go, okay, look at the list and see what's next. Okay, I've got mine over here right now because that side of my desk is a bit of a mess for the moment. And that happens from time to time. Okay, but when you get a little off track, when you're feeling like you're being pulled in too many directions all at the same time, that's your cue to take a moment and stop and go, okay, I know I've got all these things I'm being asked to do, but I can only do one at a time. So, with that in mind, which one am I going to do first? Okay, and again, the list comes in real handy for that. Don't beat yourself black and blue because of the fact, and it's real easy to say that, because of the fact you got off track. You were doing really well, and all of a sudden you slipped, and you've ended up going back into old patterns, and now you're beating yourself up going, I should know better than to do that. Well, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, that's up to you. Okay, this idea of should is what somebody else thinks you should do that ought to be happening. The reality is, it's what you feel is working and what isn't. If you're not content, you're the one that has to make the adjustment. You're the one that's got to take a look at it and go, what do I do from here? I got a call in this morning from somebody, okay, very worried about the way that their pet was dealing with. Okay. Now, on the plus side, because I'm also working medium on top of everything else, I do have a tendency of being able to sense quite often whether somebody's getting really, really ready to go. Okay. Now, ultimately, it boils down to that person or that animal's final choice. Okay, there is no expiry date. If you don't believe me, take a look at the bottom of your left foot. I did that to a woman in the hospital one day. I went in to visit my brother. He was in extended care because of a severe stroke. But I was in there to see him, and I saw this young lass sitting, laying on a bed. She was looking really under the weather. And I told her, I looked at her and I says, look, I'm not a doctor. I says, I first of all says, you're looking a little under the weather. And she goes, yeah, the doctor said I'm going to be dead next week. I looked at her and went, oh. I says, look, I'm not a doctor, but can I get you to do me a favor? I said, I don't want to touch any part of your bed. I just want to take a look at the bottom of your left foot. And she looked at me a little strange. I says, it's a little different, yes, but I'm not going to even come close to the bed. I just need to take a look at the bottom of your foot. I just want to check something. So, for whatever reason, she complied. And she kicked her foot out from underneath the cover. And I looked at the bottom of her left foot and I went, nope, you won't be dead next week. Right. And she goes, pardon? I says, there's no expiry date. You won't be dead next week. You should be up and running and up and moving at a reasonable pace inside the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Right. So she put her foot back under the covers and I took off, went and visited my brother and went home. The following week I came back. I came back to see my brother. Right. And here comes this young lass walking up the hallway. Right. She was on a hydration IV. But she stops and she looks at me and she looks at the doctor and she tugs on the doctor's arm and she points to me and goes, that's the man that said I wasn't going to die like you guys told me I was. That's the guy that said I'd be up and walking around within the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Right. And then she started off on something, and of course I was going my way. Right, I was going to see my brother anyway. But she was really happy, really considering the fact I think she was in her early 90s. Right. She was doing remarkably well. And quite happy about the fact that she wasn't dead at that point. Of course, in all fairness, the doctors were a little confused about it. But that's okay. One thing I did find that I do enjoy doing with doctors is finding a way to confuse them. Now, I'm going to go back to that other thing. Like I said, this is rather a scattered day. I probably, 2020 hindsight, I should have thought through what I was going to talk about before I got started, but apparently that didn't happen, in case you couldn't tell. When you get off track, you take a moment, You look at yourself and you go, okay, yeah, I got off track, but I'm going to get back on track, just kind of like when you get thrown from a horse. Okay, the first rule of thumb, from what I've been told, is get back on the horse as quick as you can. Okay, so get back in the saddle, get back on the track you were aiming at, and make things happen. That is completely up to you. Because even, like, I've heard a lot of doctors tell people, you've got to quit smoking because it's bad for your health. And, the doctor can tell you this, but you're the one that's going to have to stop. Okay, you're the one that's going to have to put the effort into stopping. Now, fortunately, where it comes to quitting smoking, I've always held if the doctors really wanted you, if the doctors and the government really wanted you to quit smoking, they quit putting addictive chemicals into the cigarettes. But failing that, okay, if you desire to quit smoking, it can be done without withdrawals, without any sort of replacement, such as gum or something else. Okay, I've talked to a lot of people, I've given people the same tool, and I should probably look at doing that one of these days on a video. Okay, it's a tool that I have shared with a lot of people that have been smoking, and I will tell you, it is as boring as heck, but it works. Now, did I personally test that theory? No, I never personally started smoking. Okay, but I've had enough people that I've known that did start smoking, that had tried all kinds of therapies, all kinds of substitutions. None of it worked for them. This one method that I came across works like an absolute charm, but it requires effort on your part, and you've got to be doing it because you desire to quit smoking. Okay, in all fairness, my suspicion is, even if you personally don't desire to quit smoking, okay, or at least are not adverse to it, the method in all likelihood will work for you anyway. Okay, I'm just making a note here, quite literally, to make sure I do that in one of the days in the near future here. Now, the nice part about it is quitting smoking, quitting drinking, quitting drugs, all of these things and many other things, you can take the same system, put it to use, and end that particular route of yours on your own, without withdrawal, without substitutions. In other words, without, for instance, going on the patch, or for that matter, going to meetings on a regular basis. Now, do understand something very important about meetings. Support groups are critical in stopping most negative behavior in your body. Okay, because we have to remember, it's not just a psychological thing, it's also a physical addiction that usually happens. Okay, where it comes to staying on track, which, in case you hadn't noticed today, I'm just not having much luck with it. Okay, it's the same thing though. You simply have to keep pulling yourself back. Watch a baby when they first learn to walk. Okay, they keep pushing until they finally figure out how to get up and walk. Now, yes, sometimes a parent will hold their hands and help, pull them to their feet, or let them pull themselves to their feet, and then balance them a little. Okay, it's what I call a crutch. And crutches are a good thing. Okay, kind of like a cane is a good thing if you've got a bad leg like I've got. Okay, but you get yourself back on track by simply going, I got off track, let's turn back to there. It's kind of like if you're driving. You turn down a wrong road, you get to a dead end, you turn right around, you come back to where you were and pick up. Okay, which is a great idea. Wish I could follow it on occasion, but I get lost way too quick. But by getting yourself back on track by doing exactly the things that you know have worked. This also applies, by the way, to people and to those of you that have a business that is not going as well as it used to. Take a look at the fundamentals. What are you not doing now that you did when you first started your business. Now, that may be a few years, that may be a number of years back. It doesn't matter. Look at what you're not doing that you were doing, because that change may be the fundamental difference between why your company is doing well or not. Okay, same thing applies when you're in a relationship. If you've gotten off track and you're constantly at odds with each other, take a look at what has been removed from your relationship. I would lay odds in more cases than not, what's happened is that you've gotten away from communicating with each other. Lord knows the family unit used to gather around the dinner table every night. They'd shut on, there wasn't a whole lot of electronics to shut off, but they'd gather around the dinner table and they would talk about their day. Okay, they would connect with family that way. The moment people started getting away from that, the ability to communicate has been badly withdrawn. It's really been badly crippled. Okay, and this is why I say it's time to go back to the basics. Okay, there's a saying in business, again, they call it the KISS method. And politely, I put it this way: keep it simple, silly. The real one is the one I was taught was keep it simple, stupid. Well, stupid says take a look at what you've done that you know isn't working and do it anyway. Now that's stupid. Okay, it's also borderline insane. Okay, I love the way it was defined to me one day. Insanity is best described as repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Okay, but if you keep things simple, okay, I like the way it was put to me one day. If you can explain whatever you're doing in simple terms, that's the mark of a genius. Okay, now, I run into certain snags. I've never claimed to be a genius. As a matter of fact, I got a kick out of it. They diagnosed me mentally retarded. You get to figure out if that one applies. But I do my best to keep these under the 30-minute mark, so we're just getting to that end. And again, my apologies. It's been really scattered today. But welcome to the way my world goes. That said, I will be back again tomorrow. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.